please be upstanding for His Worship the Mayor?
As you see that, members maybe with jackets if you want to. Croeso I cyfarfod a llawen a cynwr. Welcome to full council. Wednesday, June the 19th. Please note that this meeting will be recorded for subsequent broadcasted via the authority's internet site. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the authority. The public seating area will be in view of the camera, and by entering the chamber and using the public seating area, members of the public are consenting to be filmed until the possible use of these images and sound recordings as outlined above. We'll go on to the agenda. Any apologies for absence? Any declarations of interest? Please note section A and B. So we'll go on to the open session. We have the minutes approved from 3A to 3N. Who's that?
I'll move the accuracy of those minutes, Mr. Mayor.
I second those, Mr. Mayor.
Can we take that to vote, please?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, before we take that to the vote, I've noticed there's a typing error on one of the minutes. On page 6, formal election of the Deputy Mayor, the bullet point that reads, Councillor W.A. Rogers then gave notice of a further amendment and proposed that Councillor M. Colbran be the Deputy Mayor for 2019-2020 and Councillor S. Thomas be Deputy Mayor for 1920 to 1921. So I think there's an amendment that needs to be made there.
That's carried, thank you very much. Right, we'll go on to item number 4, the notice of motion. Is that Councillor Darren?
You had to look for me there, Mr. Mayor, didn't you? I'm down here. Mr. Mayor, thank you. Notice of motion this evening. As most elected members in the chamber will be aware, we get asked all the time about nappies in our refuse bin. Not just nappies, but obviously adult nappies, incontinence pads and sanitary products as well. So this notice of motion is basically asking for a business case to be and a viability study to be carried out to see if it's viable for the local authority. So the motion is nappy and absorbent hygiene products currently accounts for around 10% of all household waste in Wales. This constitutes the largest identifiable and ever-increasing category of household waste sent to landfill, with the average child using between 4,500 and 5,000 nappies until they are potty trained, and at an average used weight of around 195 grams per nappy. Each child is producing over 150 black bags worth of waste in their first few years. With over 90,000 households in Wales using disposable nappies, we are producing over 27,000 tonnes of such materials each year, over 140 million nappies per annum. It is anticipated that it takes up to 500 years for nappies to decompose fully at landfill. The Welsh Government's national policy framework towards zero waste aims to reduce dependency on landfill and specifically targets biodegradable waste in landfill sites, such as nappies, adult incontinence pads and feminine hygiene products. Given that 38% of all UK methane emissions are accounted for by landfill, reducing the amount of absorbent hygiene products and disposable nappies going to landfill will have a significant impact on Wales's greenhouse emissions. There are currently 7 local authorities that have engaged in this recycling scheme: Rhondda and Taff, Swansea, Bridgend, Blaenau Gwent, Conwy, Gwynedd and Carmarthenshire. Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that this council resolves that a full detailed business case and viability study is carried out to implement a nappy recycling scheme in Merthyr Tydfil at the earliest opportunity, and could that come back by the December meeting if possible, so we give 6 months to look into that and then feedback to council. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Someone second that, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I second that. In seconding it, I'm delighted to second this notice of motion for several reasons. Firstly, should it become part of the council's waste management strategy, it will help residents who have children in nappies and other residents who have illnesses which mean they have to use absorbent hygiene products. They will benefit in that they do not need to use capacity in their refuse bin for these products. It will also negate the excuse that these types of products are fly-tipped because of lack of capacity in refuse bins. And anyone who has been on a fly-tip clearance, and I've been on many of them, has seen that there are nearly always hygiene products amongst the waste. The benefit of the council is that the waste that currently ends up at landfill or energy from waste sites becomes part of our recycling process, which will benefit our Welsh Government recycling targets. Yes, there is a cost to the service, but when that is compared to the potential fines we could face for not achieving the Welsh Government targets, circa £200 a tonne, and the environmental impact caused by fly tipping these products, I think it would be a small price to pay. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any questions? President.
It's a question really in relation to this motion. There are lots of parents out there, and grandparents for that matter. The size of the bins that we've got has been reduced, and any family that's got 1, 2, 3, 4 children, the bin soon tots up to the lid. What is the system for applying for a larger bin to accommodate either nappies or incontinent pads, for example?
Thanks, Councillor. The system is if you contact the Waste Services Department, your request will go through to the Waste Management Wardens and they'll come out and assess whether an alternative type of bin is required.
Well, I'll make a comment.
Any other questions? Councillor Amos.
Yeah, it's a question really for the mover of the motion. Darren, are you included in this colostomy bags? I've had that question asked me by a constituent, or is it purely simply colostomy bags? Because simply absorbent material, because it strikes me that colostomy bags are hardly something suitable for general waste.
If I speak, will I be closing the debate? Okay. Julian, this specific one refers to absorbent pads because there is a way of actually splitting them and recycling it and using the product. I think colostomy bags is a totally different ball game, if you like. And as far as I'm aware, the only way of disposing of it is through the refuse system. But I'm no expert on it. But this motion is purely for absorbent products.
Councillor Thomas.
Just a question of Judith, really. Are we already looking at a business plan for this kind of product?
Yeah, Councillor, we are. We're involved in discussions across the region. Welsh Government are currently carrying out works to procure a solution for this, albeit that some authorities are already carrying out. They're looking for a plant in the region so that it's feasible for all authorities to take it on. So we're engaged in those discussions. We have already given indication that we are, in principle, you know, happy to move along with the discussions at the moment until we work up a business case on it.
Any more questions? Andrew?
Will that fit then, Judith, within the timescale as suggested by the motion by Councillor?
Possibly not. I can't say for sure yet. At the moment, those discussions are not advanced enough in terms of giving us figures and things to develop a full business case, but we can at least bring back an information report if it's not possible.
Can we just be clear that
Any comments? Councillor George?
Okay, Mr. Mayor. I asked a question about how one goes about obtaining the appropriate or larger bin for a reason. Because if you look at the motion and it says the average child using between 4,500 and 5,000 nappies until they're potty trained, that's a hell of a lot of nappies to go into the smaller bin. And I'm aware of quite a few people who have applied and not been granted. So they've got to put all of these and fit them in to the smaller bin. And that's the reason why I asked the question. But in relation to the motion, in this day and age, Mr. Mayor, we shouldn't be putting incontinent pads or nappies into the smaller size bin that we've got. There are adjoining authorities in RCT in Blaenau Gwent and 3 others in South Wales who've been undertaking and doing this for quite some time. I'm sure that we can contact the officers then and find out their experiences. And I understand in RCT, for example, and I'm sure Councillor Lee Davis, who lives in that authority's area, will tell you that they have a purple bin and it all goes in there and it's working well over there.
Are there any more comments? Councillor Harvard.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel so strongly about this particular issue that I feel I must make a short contribution to the notice of motion. Because in officer reports, year after year, we see statements in there saying how good our levels of recycling are in Merthyr Tydfil. And if my reading is right, we are one of the best authorities in Wales in terms of recycling. And this is backed up by elected members. They always give encouragement to the officers in terms of recycling. Now, this issue that's contained in the notice of motion will increase our recycling and decrease our amount of material going to landfill. Therefore, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm hoping everybody else will support it, because it's difficult not to go and vote in favour of the notice of motion, because simply it's increasing the recycling within the county borough of Merthyr Tydfil. Therefore, every councillor here this evening should support this report that's been called for, and when we've got the report, we then get down to the nitty-gritty, because obviously, as has been said, nobody knows how much it's going to cost yet. But from where I'm sitting this evening, and from where every other councillor is sitting this evening, there's only one way forward with this, and that is to give it the chance.
Councillor Hughes.
Just to say, I'm sure we will all support this. It's a good notice of motion. As was said by Judith, we are looking at it as a regional partnership with all other partners in the South East Wales RAP team. And then also that Welsh Government have gone away and they are looking for other people to bring down the price of recycling these products so that it be more cost effective to us as authority. So we are looking into it and I fully support the motion.
Thanks, Chair. Just following on what Councillor Jones said, I've used the service. It is excellent. It does impact on what goes into your bin. Not only that, when we're out flight, picking up fly tipping within the community, there are numerous black bags we're picking up on a constant basis, full of dirty nappies. So.
Are there any more comments? No. We've had a move and seconder, so can we put it to the vote, please? That's carried. Thank you, Rich. We're going to item number 5 on the agenda, the special leave policy, and I'll ask Councillor Andrew Barry to take this, please.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Special leave policy is an amendment to it. Very straightforward report, Mr Mayor, to amend the policy in relation to school governors who are employees of this authority. Following consultation, it was felt that a more defined amount of paid leave would be more appropriate to our policy. Up to 37 hours, 5 days per week, per academic year during normal working hours. This is reflected in the recommendations 2.1, page 61 of your report. The recommendation at paragraph 3.4, implemented with immediate effect, be approved. I move, Mr Mayor.
Can I second it, please?
I second that, Mr Mayor.
Okay, Mr Mayor, it's just a small question in relation to the 37 hours stroke 5 days. Perhaps you can tell us that can the 37 hours be split up? Because obviously governors won't only attend the governing body, but there's the various subcommittees that they have to attend in some cases.
Okay, so the 37 hours relates to the contract that the member of staff works, and then it's 5 days that they'll have per their employment contract. So yes, the 5 days can be split up where it could be an hour in the afternoon, an hour in the morning, or over a dinner period. That's not a problem. And our time and attendance system allows us to put in corrections for half hour if necessary.
Are there any more questions? No. Any comments? Councillor Jones.
Yes, I support the recommendation here, the 3.4, for the 37 hours per academic year. That will ensure, in my view, that the managers will have to have a very, very good reason for stopping an employee attending either a governing body or a subcommittee of the governing body. Governors, school governors, as I know, and I've been one since 1992, are badly needed in all the schools, and there are a number of schools with a number of vacancies. And this, in my opinion, will be a very good example to employers out there who are not allowing their employees to attend school governing bodies.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with Councillor Jones. It's a very fair and generous proposal, in my opinion, and hopefully it will attract more governors into the various governing bodies. So I fully support it. Thank you.
Councillor Steers.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Like the leader and deputy leader of the opposition, I also support this policy. I think it's absolutely fantastic. As someone who was actually a chair of governors, it was always difficult sometimes to be able to get time off to go to really important meetings, and obviously the role of being a school governor is really, really, really important. So this council's commitment and support in terms of amending the special leave policy, I know will surely be welcomed by schools, by governing bodies, and like the other two members, and I'm sure all of you, I fully support this.
Final questions? Any comments? We're going to item number 6, the work experience scheme. Let's come to Andrew, why you take out as well.
Thanks, Mayor. Work experience scheme. Really pleased to be bringing this report, Llewellyn's report, today in relation to work experience. Currently, we have operated work experience on a very ad hoc basis with informal agreements. This report proposes a more consistent, planned and quality of experience, if you want, approach. Anyone who's over 14 can apply online. 14 because it's the time within the school curriculum where they tend to start looking for these type of work experience placements. The placements are voluntary and unpaid. They are not designed to replace any paid role. They act as a taster for potential careers for young individuals. The content of the policy is covered at page 66, 4 to 4.14. The placement profile template is Appendix 2, page 77, and will be collated by the Workforce Development team within our HR department. There's a detailed process map at Appendix 3, page 79. The placement agreement is at Appendix 4, page 81. And the guidance booklet is provided for managers, can be seen in Appendix 5. The recommendation at 2.1 is simply the work experience policy and its appendices be approved. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
A second for the report.
I second that, Mr. Mayor.
Members, any questions? Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I take members to page 66 under 3.5? It has been touched upon by Councillor Barry, but I'll ask a question in relation to this. And it says trade unions have been consulted with regard to this policy and are supportive, but highlighted concerns surrounding confidentiality and the use of work experience placements to replace paid members of staff. Can I then take members in relation to that to page 71 of the work experience policy? 73, sorry, not 71, 73, and look under 2.1 under the definitions of this policy. And the last sentence of that reads, the experienced couples job shadowing with a carrying out of a range of tasks, more or less as would an employee, but with an emphasis on learning. Could somebody clarify that in relation to the comments from the trade unions?
So just before I answer that, just because I'm aware that most people won't be familiar with me, my name's Llewellyn Mummery and I'm here by virtue of the All Wales Public Service Graduate Scheme. So on page 73 with the policy, that sentence is there to sort of emphasise the importance of a high quality work experience placement for participants, so that they get as true a sort of taste of the career that they might be interested in. So the idea is that as far as you can in that sort of short time you have with regards to their sort of abilities and skills, you allow them to do as wide a range of sort of tasks as possible to give them a full experience. But of course the intention and nature of work experience unpaid placements are that they are still short placement designed as a taster.
I got another question, Mr. Mayor, if it's possible. And this is on page 87. and it's under 1.2, what is work experience. Below that, the third black dot down, and it states the vast majority of placements last for 1 to 2 weeks, but some can be varied in length as and when it is appropriate. My understanding that, for example, if you have a 14-year-old there for job experience, that you're not likely to be there for more than that 1 week. But in the case of those older adults, would they be there for a longer period of time? And if so, because it says in there that it could be more varied in length as and when is appropriate, what would be the maximum length of time that you know, an older person would be working anywhere?
So I think that would be in line with the discretion of the individual manager and department, in line with their strategic objectives and what they're looking to get out of work experience, and having someone there to sort of experience the role. So, for example, in sort of hard to fill areas, they might have their own views as to sort of how long they'd want someone in to give them that taster. And with regards to it being varied in lengths, that's really so that managers who might have demands upon time and resources have the ability to sort of have some flexibility as to the length of placement that they can offer, so that they can give those experiences, but it not create too much of a demand on their time and resource. So with regards to sort of maximum length, that would be up to the discretion of the manager, I envisage.
So just to clarify, Mr. Mayor, there is no cap on the length of time that an adult could be working in any one place in the authority?
Not under this policy at this stage. That could be sort of revised at a later date, but no, not at this stage under this policy.
Members, any more questions?
Yes, Councillor Rogers. Comments, is it?
Councillor Mitten.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a fantastic document, a fantastic opportunity to give young people, as we said, taster sessions, give them a taste of what it is for, you know, we're on comments, aren't we? Sorry, Tony said he had a comment, and I thought we were on comment. Right, apologies there.
Any comments? Councillor Mitten.
Thought we had. Woo, groundhog. Yeah, I was just saying, reiterating it, that this is a fantastic opportunity and something that I wholeheartedly endorse for young people. With regards to the questions about a cap of how long somebody can have work experience, let's not forget this is about a taste of what it is for work in life, and I really don't think we'd have any young adult, as we call them, or 14-year-old working for any length of time without being paid. And work experience is really around that it is work experience. You know, we have an ageing workforce. It is giving people the opportunity to have experience of what work in life is. Certain departments that we have, looking within, you know, those departments and opportunities that may be available for those young people in the future. So I wholeheartedly support the report.
Councillor Tony Rogers.
I'm glad Councillor Mitten came in. Took a lot of my my ideas, but I'm proud of her because she's a Kevin Coyd girl as well. So don't worry about it. You're from the Coyd like I am. I'm born and bred there, look. Now, what I'd like to say about this report is that, touching on what Clive said as well, I'd like to see it. Obviously, the 14 to 18-year-olds, probably 2 weeks is enough for that, but I'd like the older ones then to have probably have a month, I'm reading the report, because this also, as Councillor Mitten quite rightly said, is that this also forms part of their CV in time, really, because it's very important. And when you come to a local authority, I was in a governor's meeting last week in Pant, and I spoke on it actually, but you can come to a local authority and you can see a person would see another department, perhaps that think would suit him better, you know. That's what I thought of it. So I'd like to see, I don't mind the truth, but I'd like to see it a bit longer for an older person, give it a month at least, you know, but whatever you decide, I'll accept it. And I would also like to say that this is an excellent report, and one of the best I've ever read, to be honest with you. So HR, take a bow, Because you won't have many of me, but you'll have this one, I'll tell you now you will. Excellent and great to read, and it followed on. So we can do that. It's so important, this work experience. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Chris Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, similar schemes operated in the NHS for quite a number of years, and it's been really successful. Though, in fairness, it's not aimed so much at younger people in the NHS because of the type of role, but you know, it's been very useful and beneficial both to the participants in the scheme and to the organisation, because many of them do end up working in the organisation. Some concerns were raised in our group meeting last night about how onerous it is on the people actually working here, and if it's anything like the way we operate in the NHS, it's not onerous at all. You're not actually training people to do the job. They're basically shadowing you and seeing how different departments operate. So I fully support this.
Councillor Chris Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, like Councillor Mitten and Councillor Rogers, I really welcome this report as the Children and Young People's Champion, giving our young people a taste, an opportunity to experience what life is like in local government. You know, to be fair, they're going to be our future generations, our future workforce. As we go on a journey of succession planning, we've got growing older, ageing workforce, and this gives our young people a real opportunity and a chance to see what life is like. If we don't support our young people and create opportunities for them, who's going to do that? We're one of the biggest employers in this county borough. What I'd like to put on record in the minutes, and I said it at corporate leadership team, is to thank Luenna for the work that she's put into this. Like Councillor Rogers said, this is a fantastic report. It's really lovely. Another example of having a graduate in the local authority, a young person who's really taken this and made it her own, and has come up with an excellent scheme and an excellent policy that I hope that members across the chamber here will support for our young people across this county borough.
Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too welcome this report and adopting this policy. In as much as the council will have central control and management over the process, but clearly there will be need at some time to have an evaluation and a review as to how the policy is working, and that should include feedback from the mentors and those particular people who are participating in the work experience placements. And in that regard, I'd like to move an amendment to the recommendation, in fact will be added to it, that the council receives a report in approximately 9 months' time to review the work experience scheme and its implementation.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, any question on the amendment, please?
I'm happy to add that to the amendment, but 12 months, is that okay? Yeah. So I'm happy to put that into the recommendations.
Sorry, just to be clear, then you'll add that into the overall motion, and we don't need to take a separate vote on that amendment because that is now what the motion contains. Okay.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just picking up on a point raised earlier by Chris Davis, something that I do support. A lot was discussed during the comments about the opportunities for young people, and I think it's fantastic to see that yourself, Louina, from what I understand, the All Wales Public Service Graduate Training Scheme. That's fantastic to hear. Congratulations on a very good report. And I think graduate skills is something that we as an organisation as a whole hasn't really taken advantage of over a number of years now. So you're welcome to be here, and good luck on your career.
Councillor Roberts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like other colleagues and members in the chamber tonight, I'm fully supportive of this. I actually, back in the day, in 1986, had a week work experience. It didn't go well. I was 6'6" and had long hair at the time. But I'm sure that this will work well, and I welcome hearing the positive report that's fed back to Council in 12 months.
So any more comments? Just remind members that we are voting with that amendment as well. Okay? So we can go to vote now, please. Any members carried? So we go on now to item number 7. It's a petition for the Old General Hospital, and Councillor Thomas is taking this.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This petition has been brought by the public of one of our iconic buildings, the Old General Hospital. The summary report is set out in 1.1 to 1.2. The introduction of 3.1. A petition was received by Democratic Services and was confirmed by full council on the 16th of January 2019 for residents of various areas of Merthyr Tydfil requesting that Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council take all appropriate legal enforcement action, in particular legislation relating to the Dangerous Building Acts 1984, Section 77, on the above mentioned property. The findings are set out in 4.1 to 4.25. And there's various reports from different departments in the council, from environmental health, planning, building regulations, regeneration, community safety, and finally legal. I know that officers have met with the owners on numerous occasions, and various owners of the hospital, and have offered them various grant support to develop the building. Unfortunately, up until now, it hasn't happened. And we're hoping this is still going to progress. One of the things I'm going to go through in 4.25 with the legal side of it, with regard to the aspect of the petition concerning the idea of compulsory purchase being considered, legal advice will be taken. However, if this course of action is taken, the timescale to run a compulsory purchase order will be in excess of 2 years. And we believe that something may occur quicker than that. So I'll go straight to the recommendations in 2.1, that the individual department findings and actions taken be noted. I so move, Chair.
Could I have a second, please?
I second, Mr Mayor, and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Sorry,
Mr.
so Tanya is hand
Oh,
up.
so, my apologies.
Hi, yeah, I've got some questions. There's quite a lot, so bear with me. Okay, so just to start off, on section 4.3 and 4.13, it alludes to various visits by the Building Controls Department and Environmental Health. My first question is, on those visits, have risk assessments been carried out around the risk of further collapse and to determine if there's asbestos present in the building?
In terms of building control, yeah, when they visit, they do carry out a risk assessment. They wouldn't carry out asbestos assessments. That's not within their remit.
So how do we know if asbestos is in the building?
We don't know positively if asbestos is in the building. Obviously, the internal responsibility for that building is with the owner. From an environmental health perspective, then that building being secure to public access is the duty that we ensure.
The asbestos laws came in 1999 and the hospital closed in 1991. So my question is, how can we be sure that there's no asbestos? Because although you say that your risk is only if you go into the building, if there's asbestos in the building and the building is at risk of collapse, then that immediately poses a risk to public health. So that's why I asked that question. But if there was a new developer, they would need documentation to determine if there's asbestos, because if there was, they would have to take measures to protect their workers. So I'm just wondering if that documentation exists, and if it does exist, if it could be shared with me as one of the local councillors.
When development ultimately happens in that building, or any remedial action is taken, you are correct, there would be a requirement for an asbestos survey that would have to be taken out either by the developer or the owner. as and when obviously that time comes, then we'd be more than happy to share that information.
Okay, but in the meantime, the report clearly states that as a council, we believe that it poses no risk to public health. If we can't answer the question on asbestos, how can we then make a judgment that it poses no risk to public health?
Yeah, we're obviously responding from the different disciplines of the council that are responsible for. So, for example, building control, planning, etc. Those disciplines are not responsible for things like asbestos. So when we're saying, commenting on the risk to public health, obviously we're not accounting for asbestos in that.
If there was evidence of asbestos as a danger to the public, which was visible, obviously within public access to the curtilage or whatever, then obviously there would be a different approach. But if there is asbestos, which obviously we don't know, then that would be solely the responsibility of the owner of the building.
And I completely understand that, Alan, but you know, as a local authority, it still doesn't answer the question, how can we make a judgment to say that there's no risk to public health when we don't know if there's asbestos? If that building was to collapse tomorrow, which many of us believe is a possibility, and I know that some people disagree with that, but if you live there and you see that there's 2 roofs collapsed already, if it were to collapse tomorrow, there would be a whole plume of potentially toxic dust going into the houses directly behind and around the hospital. So isn't it important that we know if there's asbestos in that building?
Councillor Skinner, there's been answers given about the responsibility for identifying whether there's asbestos there. I don't think we can take that any further. So if you have questions on other matters, if you can take those.
Okay, the report mentions nothing about the presence of vermin, including rats and pigeons. I wondered what has been done to address these issues.
We can only go from an environmental health perspective, obviously, on what's seen on inspections, and obviously from reporting and from the inspections which do happen on a regular basis from environmental health. Officers are confident that there is no problem, no visible problem.
So there's no pigeons or rats in the building?
I can't speak for the pigeon, for the pigeon element, but not rats.
Any more questions?
I don't understand how the department can say that though, because you know, anybody who lives in the area sees the rats regularly. A derelict building will attract rats. But Caris, if the answers aren't factual and I disagree with the answers, then surely I've got a right to challenge that.
Comments, you can make a comment. The officer has answered your question, so if you have another question, you can move on. If you want to make comments at the end, of course, it's open to you to make comments.
Any more questions, Councillor?
Yes, yeah. There's 4.2 and 4.23. The 2 calls that have actually been logged, which is, again, questionable, are relating to, I know what they're relating to because I'm familiar with the issue, and I know that it was a PAC priority for a number of months. So the 2 calls are relating to children climbing on the roof. My question is, if a child were to die or to be seriously injured, are the council confident that they have done everything in their power to prevent this occurring?
I'd say at this point in time, Councillor Skinner, yes. Obviously, the owner has responsibility. If officers believe that there are any risks which need to be a matter for enforcement, then obviously that'll be taken up with the owner.
Thank you. The other one was, there's mention of an antisocial referral from the police and talk of a community safety unit intervening. Given that last year and this year, Alexandra Road, including the hospital, were made a PAC priority by police for 7 consecutive months. Can you explain, firstly, what's an antisocial referral in this instance? And who are the community safety unit? The reason I ask is because as I would have assumed that we would have been made aware of these things before, and we until now, until this report, I've never even heard of either one of those measures. So could you tell me a bit more about that, please?
Yeah, we have a community safety unit, and within that we have responsibility for antisocial behaviour and antisocial behaviour orders. Based on log reports to the police, we get referrals where the police believe that a civilian response to the problems is appropriate. Unfortunately, as stated here, this is triggered by the public's calls to the 101 service, and without those calls from the public, which are logged to the 101 service, then the process of antisocial behaviour referrals, which come from the police to the council to a community safety officer, isn't triggered.
Again, though, Alan, you know, like I mentioned in the question, it was a PAC priority for 7 months. So obviously, in order for it to be a priority, it would have to warrant significant concern. There was a street surgery held last year where police attended. Police have visited various local residents. So I'm not quite sure. It may be something we could take up after this meeting. But there seems to be a disconnect because there's definitely more than 2 incidents. And I know the report mentions that it'll very often it'll relate to the resident that may have reported it. But for the purposes as a local authority, I think it may be worth addressing that, so we start to see a real picture rather than just 2 episodes, which we know isn't true.
I think we mentioned in the report that we're more than happy to work with elected members and local residents to explain how everyone can play their part, so that the reporting system generates the information from the police to allow follow-up action. More than happy to do that, Councillor Skinner.
There was another part to that, I think, Alan, wasn't it? Where is it? The community safety unit. Could you tell me more about that?
Yeah, within the council we have a unit. We have a community safety officer who has responsibility for community safety. That sits within trading standards as an evidence-based unit.
So again, they probably rely on evidence coming from the police.
Totally.
So moving on, section 4.18 mentions that a grant may be available, which is really positive, and we're all happy about. But I did notice it mentions the word may be available. So my question is, what is the criteria for determining which buildings get the grant, seeing as we have so many in Merthyr that's needed them? How much are we likely to get? And how can we make sure that the general is among the buildings chosen?
The most recent grant, regeneration grant from Welsh Government, was made available from the 1st of April this current calendar year. It's called the Targeted Regeneration Investment Fund. Basically, it's around town centre regeneration. The grant is based on priority buildings and priority schemes within town centres across the 10 South East Wales local authorities. The General is one of our key buildings, has been our key priority, as you can see from this report, in the last regeneration programme. There's no guarantee of a grant being successful because it's based on the quality and feasibility of the development proposal from a developer, but it is one of our key priorities in the town centre.
Okay, so just to confirm, if there's a list that currently exists and you've identified priority buildings within the borough, the General Hospital is on there.
That is correct, yes.
Thank you, Alan. I think I just have one more if I'm right. Bear with me a second. Yeah, it's just one more, and it was regarding when the petition was submitted, there were 4 separate letters of complaint from various residents, all mentioning issues that I've talked about, such as drug dealing in the grounds, people passed out in the grounds or hanging over the wall, spice users predominantly, rats and pigeons, and groups of youths hanging around in the area, a general feeling of being unsafe. But they haven't received any response as far as I'm aware from talking to them. So I'm wondering why our complaint procedure hasn't been abided to in relation to those 4 letters.
I can't really answer that question, but I'm more than prepared to get back to you on it.
Okay, if I make sure you get a copy of the letters. I think that's it, thank you. Thank you, Alan.
Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got 2 questions, and one is in relation also to 4.18. And Councillor Skinner has already asked the question about the grant. But if you turn over the page, top of the page 102, and the last sentence, it reads, "The owner has indicated his commitment towards the redevelopment, and further discussions will be held over the coming weeks to agree a way forward." My understanding, since he's bought this building, is that he doesn't wish to redevelop it himself, and he wants to sell it on. Has the owner changed his mind?
Obviously, I can't speak for the owner's actual intention, but I met with the gentleman. I think it was about 3 weeks ago now, and obviously we had a discussion about the history, the current ownership, and the potential for redevelopment. We discussed the interest that the gentleman had from developers looking to develop the building. We also discussed the potential of the same type of support, financial support that would be available to him as the owner if he wished to develop it, and he indicated that that was something that he would give serious consideration to. But whatever the final intention is, obviously I don't know.
And my other question is on page 100, 4.8, under the heading Building Regulations. I read the first part of that, under 4.9, it says, "As the building is privately owned and is contained within the site, it does not pose a risk to passing public." The petition that was handed in some months ago, the part of it, top part of it, which people are asked to sign, says, requesting the council take all appropriate legal enforcement action, in particular legislation relating to the Dangerous Building Acts 1884, Section 77 of the above mentioned property. My understanding that that particular section is in relation to the dangerous state, if it's a danger to the public. Can you confirm that in relation to that act, that the council cannot take any action against the current owner as in accordance with the act, the building is not in a danger to the public?
That's correct, Clive, yeah.
Chris Barry.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to look at section 4.25 on page 102, and it discusses the idea of compulsory purchase. And Mr. Mayor, residents have been consistent over the years, and it's 3 residents here tonight who live very close proximity to the hospital and are directly affected by it. And I think it's fair to say the preferred option has always been for the local authority to purchase the building and assume responsibility. However, the advice given consistently and time again over the last 15 years, is that that's not an option. We've been told it cannot be done. Now we see from this paragraph that legal advice will be taken. So the first question is, when are we going to seek that legal advice, and how long will it take to come through?
We're in the process of seeking barrister's opinion. As you understand, Councillor Barry, compulsory purchase isn't a simple process, and obviously the owner of the asset has the opportunity to challenge that. For a successful compulsory purchase, and perhaps Caris or Fran will sort of shout me if I'm wrong here, obviously the local authority has to have the finance in place to be able to undertake works which will bring the building back into use, or to dispose of a different means, and it also has to have a legal basis to do it. Now currently the owner isn't refusing to do anything with the building. He's actively marketing the building and discussing on a proactive basis with developers. So the argument of the owner not being prepared to do anything with the building at this point in time is obviously questionable.
It's a hugely complicated process. It's a massively expensive process, and on the facts that are before you at the moment, there's not a very high likelihood of success. So before the council spends that kind of money, you would need to be confident of success. You're not confident of success at the moment, but that's why we're taking barrister's opinion to see if there are any angles that aren't yet explored. In the meantime, clearly if there's an option to work with the owner, then that's the better way to go about it.
Thanks, but you've partially answered some further questions, but I plough on regardless. So we're obviously not going to seek this legal advice on a whim. So if we're told it's a viable option and the owners do nothing with it, I'm assuming if barristers say yes, we can do it, it is our intention to purchase.
Subject to legal implications.
So as I said, if the barrister says yes. But that leads me on now to the further question, and Alan, you've alluded to it. It's going to be vastly expensive. How we got the funds to do it? But just as importantly, if we purchase the building, what are we going to do with it? And is it right that whereas the owner can draw down funds to develop it, we find it far more difficult as a local authority?
That is correct. That if I go from your last question first, Councillor Barry, the current funding available is focused towards the private sector. It obviously represents a percentage investment towards the total redevelopment cost, and currently there is no provision within our capital programme to make a financial contribution to redevelopment of this building. One thing I'd like to add as well, the current finance within the system is time bound. The programme has 2 years to run.
Members, any more questions?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. During the passage of the previous questions, I think it was ascertained that Section 77 of the Dangerous Buildings Act 1984 cannot be used in this instance because the building is not currently deemed as being dangerous. Similarly, it appears that a CPO would be a timely and costly affair. Can you please advise if there are any other powers available to the council that can ensure that the building is improved?
As you'll probably be aware, we've previously served a Section 215 notice. That's something within the gift of planning that looks at improving the amenity of buildings and land. So in this particular instance, it was used to kind of clear vegetation, you know, to improve the visual impact of the site, really.
And I don't believe we have anybody here from environmental health, but are there any sort of powers within sort of environmental health legislation that can be used with regards to public health?
Not outside those stated in the report.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Moving on from something that Councillor Jones said, I heard the answer being that this as council, our officers, do not regard this building as dangerous in the context of the Buildings Act. It is no danger in the context of that act. Could I ask that that be recorded specifically in the minutes, should something dreadful happen later, that this council regarded it as not dangerous? The other question is that, in terms of that act, and perhaps Caris can answer this question, is the failure of the council to take action, is it a defence to say we can't afford it? Could I just ask you, Caris, that?
It would depend on the context. Most of the legislation would require that the local authority distributes its resources in the public interest. So where you have finite resources, you have to show a balance as to how you have distributed those resources. So that would be an entirely subjective question dependent on what happened and what the concern was. I think what's been said is that the assessments that have been carried out have identified that there isn't that risk within the context of the legislation. So we need to be very clear. We're not saying that the building is 100% safe. What we're saying is that the building within the context of the legislation that makes it our responsibility, that is what the assessment has been done. So your officers have carried out that assessment and they have come to a conclusion. We all, I am sure, hope that there is no tragedy. But if anything did happen, then we would put forward whatever defences are available to the local authority, and that would be subjective and dependent upon what had gone wrong and whether there was anything that identified from that the local authority should have acted differently.
Thank you for that, Caris. That was a very good answer. But still, my point, I would like it recorded in a minute specifically that tonight we said that in the context, as Caris said, in the context of that legislation, the building does not meet that standard, that it is not dangerous within their context. I'd like that recorded in the minutes. The other question, I'm sorry, Caris, it's another one for you, but do we have any legislation at all?
I'd like to have an officer come in and answer
the
question.
Yeah, just to add to what Caris said, specifically in relation to paragraph 4.9 on page 100, where you'll see it set out clearly there, that what we state is, as the building is privately owned and is contained within the site, it does not pose a risk to pass in public, i.e. from surrounding roads, pavements. I think that's important to clarify.
And that is what would be recorded in the minutes, is that that is what we've said. So I don't want us to try and start extending what has been said. That is what has been said, so that's what would be recorded.
All I'm asking is that what has been given here tonight is recorded as what happened here in this chamber. That's all I'm asking. It's not asking for someone, a long scribe, to go and put it down. I accept what's in the report, and I accept what I've been told, and the answer given to Councillor Jones. But all I'm saying is I would like it put in the minutes. Now, if there's some magical reason like that can't be done, I'll accept it. But the other question I was going to ask you, Caris, was, is there anything in legislation anywhere, and I genuinely don't know, is that if we could require this guy to actually fence it off, to stop people going in there? So I'm genuinely unaware of it, but do you know of anything that we could force him to at least fence it off?
I hesitate to say that there may possibly somewhere in the world be some area of legislation that I don't actually know. But when you say, is there anything anywhere that could possibly do it, I can't possibly answer that question. What I do know is that there has been lengthy debate and lengthy discussion, and that the various departments who have been involved in dealing with this are repeatedly revisiting whether there is anything else that they can do. We're in the process now of taking legal opinion about an option that would be a very, very difficult and costly option, but nonetheless we're taking advice about whether that may be a way forward. So in terms of whether there's something that can require people to fence things in, there are, just on my very sketchy knowledge, there are ways that we can require people to fence things in and make things safe. If they then fail to comply with that, we end up having to take on that responsibility. So every action that we could take will have a consequence. So before anybody starts talking about taking those actions, we have to consider all of the possible consequences of doing those things. I don't know if Jude wants to say anything more about that. Is there anything you wanted to add over and above that? Councillor Amos, I think that's all we can say in response to that for now. But we are constantly trying to see if there are other pieces of legislation that we could use.
Right, members, any more questions? Some questions? There's not. Can we go into comments, please? Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You won't believe how long I waited for this opportunity. Since I was elected to the Park Ward in 2004, together with my colleague Councillor Chris Barry, and prior to that, Councillor Brendan Toomey, and in the last 2 years, Councillor Tanya Skinner, there's been a very long, continuous complaints trail with the old General Hospital. The previous owners, the Das family, frankly, were an absolute nightmare to deal with, and were taken to court by the Environmental Health Department on at least one occasion. The building has been empty for over 20 years, with complaints of overgrowth, litter, individuals living in the building, causing antisocial behaviour, and other aspects that Councillor Tan has referred to tonight. The antisocial behaviour has caused problems, and of course the premises has been insecure on many occasions, although I don't think so at this moment in time. The residents living around the hospital should not have had to endure all these problems over the last 20 years. There have been many false dawns in the past 20 years, but I'm pleased to note in the report that officers have finally been able to meet the current owner, because that has taken some months, who, by the way, has carried out all the requests to cut back the overgrowth, litter, etc., in a list that was supplied from the planning department, and I checked up to make sure that that list of 11 to 12 had all been done. And also that further discussions will be held over the coming weeks to agree a way forward, because that's what it says in the report. The old General Hospital is situated in a conservation area and is sited on one of the main gateways into Merthyr Tydfil. I do hope that this will not be another of the false dawns that the residents, the public, and the local councillors have experienced over the last 20 years. Unfortunately, the recommendation of the report do not contain a concrete plan for the future of the hospital.
Yeah, just to say that residents have witnessed slates falling off the roof and smashing onto the pavement below them. The report actually points out the parts of the roof have collapsed. There have been fires over the years. We now know that we don't know if there's asbestos in there. We know that children are sliding down the roof. Yet as a local authority, we feel confident that it poses no risk. It just seems ludicrous. Residents in the area, many of whom have worked hard to buy their homes, have had to live with this for almost 2 decades or over 2 decades. There are ongoing and regular issues around antisocial behaviour. I don't believe personally the building is safe, and I would urge us as a local authority to do everything we can to gain the further information needed to reassure residents and my fellow constituents. Thank you.
Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll keep it very brief. Mr. Mayor, contrary to popular belief, we have tried over many years to resolve this matter, and yes, we haven't succeeded. Believe it or not, if a successful resolution is reached over the next 3 years under this current administration, I will be absolutely delighted.
Ken O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just really to bring people up to date what's going on in relation to this issue. I meet up with Alan regularly on similar issues across the borough. And I think you'd all agree Alan's been in the hot seat for the last 20 minutes. But he's got a pretty good success rate. So it's not for the want of trying that we're actually trying to sell this property. And everybody's answered said, I think the words were a nightmare, the dad's family. And I don't think this particular individual is that much better. I think everybody in this room would want to sell this property, make it safe, and enhance the environment of those people living nearby. I've met the residents group, and they've been very patient, very conscientious, and very polite in meeting me and telling me their concerns. We've tried to re-energise what's going on around the area again, and Tanya's got involved, and then some considerable industry around the area getting some support. And the great thing is it's given us some volume tonight that we all can see, because there's a great amount of passion about getting that area right. I think someone said a gateway to the valley, went up to the borough. When you turn round and see that bus stop in a terrible state and then the hospital, it doesn't give a good perspective, unlike the other end of town, which is much, much better. So the issues as far as antisocial behaviour, I want to touch on that because I spoke to the police commissioner about this yesterday and the chief constable. The reason there's not the reports of antisocial behaviour, you can't get through 101. So people lose patience in ringing up. There has been numerous reports about it, but intelligence-led from the police will say there's 1 or 2 or 3. As you know, Alan, then that kicks into the community safety antisocial behaviour order. There is no evidence. So in obtaining evidence from different ways is something that we've got to work on to satisfy the needs of that particular legislation. Finally, in relation to going forward, I think we've had a lot more points raised today. There's clearly, across the whole political framework here, a real passion about getting this sorted. It is a difficult one because, you know, as I said, Alan's got a pretty good success rate in the past in relation to developing, you know, YMCA's example. That was never going to turn out as it is. So I think some of the recording of information needs to be looked at. We need to have some conversations with the experts, define safety and what isn't safe, and get clear on that legislative framework. We need to clearly engage with the public who are living amongst this area. And I've walked up there, been up myself, and it isn't a pleasant area around that area at times, with individuals walking through that area. And I think it's very important as we progress that we get that joined-up approach and just keep on going at it. You know, I don't think there's much more we can do. But today has given the opportunity for everybody to talk openly and get all the issues right out there. So, and what's obviously clear is that everybody wants to sort it out. And we can't make the individual who's got the property be any easier to deal with. So my view is, as I regularly get quoted when the Merthyr Express get me right, which is not very often, is that we should work at this together.
Any more comments?
Yes, we're on comments.
The problem we find is when I passed the old General Hospital, because that was raised on the pennies and collections, the old freight and gala, that was. That's where the hospital kept going many, many years ago. Chapter, we know it there, you know exactly about it. But what I'm saying is talk is cheap. And you come to a point when you represent people as an elected member, you say enough is enough. Now, Alan Owen has done, on his team, and as the reader quite rightly said, doing a remarkable job. Doing some fabulous schemes, which were set up a lot, to be fair to you. I'm not going to take no gloss of you, but between Jill and myself and Jeff Edwards, they were in the process. But you have followed on and done it, which is great. So I think it's time now for the blotting landscape. Now, I don't know how many use the bus. I try and go on the bus a couple times a week, because it's good. It's good supporting your community, you pass there, and when you come there and you see that dilapidated bus shelter, what a thought of Merthyr Tydfil, the most go-ahead county borough in South Wales. We haven't got much money now, but we still go ahead. That's the problem we got, but to get that, we got to start doing things. And what I'd like to see, if it's legally possible, but many years ago, over a period, I've seen many buildings demolished here. What we normally do then, you put give them notice you're going to demolish it. If the programme, Alan, is not done in the meantime, and you claim in default, I know that can be done. So I think for people who represent the ward, like the company there, I think we should look now to give a period of time to this person and say we're looking at this time, and in the meantime, we're going to work hard to get this building. I think it's gone past, to be honest with you. It's like old Merthyr to me. I'd like to see the raised and demolished. But if you can't do that, I think we should then put a demolition order on it and say we claim in default, we're going to demolish this building because we've had enough of it, and we don't want people seeing that when they come to Merthyr Tydfil.
Councillor Thomas.
I would want to see it demolished. I lived in that area for, you know, the 15, 20 years of my life, you know, and I lived adjacent to the General Hospital. My eldest son was born there as well. And like I said, when I started the report, it's an iconic building in Merthyr, and that should be a prime building when you come into the town centre, and it should be. It's a fabulous building. Over the last 2 years, we've done quite a bit of work in the regeneration department with Alan and his team. You know, we've got the YMCA up and going, we've got the Crucible project going with the castle, the bus station's about to start now in the town, and this is another one that's on our agenda, and Alan will tell you, I ask monthly what's happening with the General Hospital. It's important to me, it's important to this town, it's important to the council. Along with that building, along with the synagogue, along with the Miners' Hall, along with the Theatre Royal, these buildings will be regenerated and they will be used again, and that's my vow for this town.
Right, members, thank you much. We'll now go to the vote. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's carried. We'll go on to item number 8. This petition received by the authority is for information only. We'll go on to item number 9, and I'd like to hand over to the leader, please.
Colleagues, you recall that an audit committee meeting on the 29th of April, a letter was presented by the Wales Audit Office raising concerns in relation to the sustainability of the council and the significant budget challenge that we currently face. A further letter was received on the 31st of May from Welsh Audit Office, highlighting these concerns in more detail. I immediately responded, acknowledging these concerns, and asked some members of the council's corporate management team, Deputy Chief Executive, Chief Officer for Regeneration, Monitoring Officer and the Council Sections 151 Officer to meet with the Welsh Audit Office and Welsh Government to seek advice and guidance moving forward. The circumstances highlight critical issues which the Council must address with a united front approach. Like other councils across the country, we need to ensure that we have sound financial capacity, robust governance and a strong leadership across all political parties if we are to remain viable. A package of support has now been offered by Welsh Government under Section 28 of the Local Government Measure 2009, which will be scoped in order to best address the challenge. I will be meeting the Minister for Housing and Local Government, Julie James, actually tomorrow to discuss what will happen next. I have no further detail at this time. I have been advised by Welsh Government that when appropriate, they will make an official announcement of exactly what this support will entail. Until that time, I cannot share or provide any further information in relation to this matter. As soon as I have clearance from the Minister, it is my intention to share the proposals with all political parties and for us to work closely with officers at some pace to achieve a sustainable recovery for this council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We're going to item 10 to see communication from His Worship the Mayor. I have none, and thank you very much this evening. Thank you.